Name Gabriela Agdomar, candidate number 7039. I was just watching a game of netball and I was watching a goal defence, and I'm going to pick out some strengths and weaknesses that I identified during her performance. One of her skill strengths that I picked out was her footwork. This was a strength as she often landed 1-2 with an even weight distribution with slight flexion at the knee, which is caused by the bicep femoris, the semitendinosus and the semimembranosus, and this meant that she was able to generate power as she pushed off the floor, and she was able to drive into free spaces. This often meant that she was able to offer another option for her teammates to pass to her, as well as always being ready to receive another pass if one was to come towards her, as well as always being in the right position when actually landing, and this was then what facilitated her to be able to drive into other spaces. Another skill strength of hers, I'd say, was her marking of her opponent, because she was always the correct distance away from her player, and she often had her arms extended at the elbow, which is caused by the tricep brachii, and this meant that she was able to apply pressure to her opponent. So when they were trying to take a pass, her arms always up and in around the ball and always moving around, which often resulted in her getting a turnover and being able to bring the ball down the court for her own team. I'd say another one, probably her main skill strength, was her shoulder pass. This was because it often made it to its intended target due to the straight and flat trajectory of the pass. This was because in the preparation phase of the pass, her feet were shoulder width apart, with her arm behind the ball on her shoulder, with their flexion at the elbow, and then in the execution phase she would extend her elbow using her bicep brachii, and the ball would then have enough power behind it to make it towards its intended target without it being intercepted or getting a tip. Often I'd say the overall efficiency of this pass was very good due to the fact that she didn't put a lot of energy into what she was doing, and it often didn't get intercepted, so the pass did make it to where it was supposed to be. I'd say some fitness strengths that I picked out during her performance. I'd say one of them would be her agility. This is because she was able to weave in and out of her defenders quite well, and this was probably due to the fast glycotic fibres in her lower body, in her legs particularly. So she was able to dodge. She used quite a range of different dodges to move in and out of her players, and she was able to develop sort of quick reactions towards this, and this meant that this was an effective outlet for the whole team, because she was able to always be in the right position to get a pass, because she was able to dodge in and out. I'd say another, probably a main fitness strength of hers that I picked out was her speed. This was because she was able, a lot of the time in the centre passes, although it's not always needed for her to be at the front, she often drove out very quickly, and her goal attack didn't anticipate this, and it meant that she was always offering an option for her teammates as a backup if they needed her, and her opponent didn't always think that she was going to do this. Because she had this good speed, probably could have been due to the fact that she had quite a good ATP system, and she was really good at bringing the ball down the court because she was so quick, and this helped her team to score more points and more goals during the whole performance. I'd say some of her tactical strengths now would be her switching. So quite a few times the goalkeeper was pulled up for obstruction outside of the semicircle, so this meant that the goal defence was left inside the semicircle with the goal shooter and both the goal attack. So what she did in this instance was that as the goalkeeper was running back into the semicircle, she called for the switch, which meant that instead of the goal defence herself marking the shot, she would stand back and hold the other player towards the post, and the goalkeeper, as she was running in, would then defend the shot. This is seen as a tactical strength, as although the goal defence herself wasn't actually defending the shot, she was tactically aware of what was going on in the game and was able to read the game and see that the goalkeeper would be able to defend the shot quicker than she would be able to. So I would say that this was one of the main tactical strengths that she showed during her performance. Another tactical strength that I picked up during her performance would be blocking. So she done this quite a few times to her goal attack, as when she was coming down, she would often leave her goal attack in the centre third and come back and into the goal third. So as her goal attack would try to run in, without causing contact, she would firmly stand on the edge of the semicircle, which meant that her goal attack would sometimes run into her and cause contact, which meant that the ball would be turned over to her team, or they would have to work a lot harder to try and get around her to get into the semicircle to actually score. So this was obviously seen as a tactical strength, because it stopped her opposing team from being able to shoot, or made it a lot harder for them to shoot, as there was only sometimes one shooter in the circle, which obviously narrowed down the likelihood of them actually scoring, with there only being one person in the semicircle. Now moving on to weaknesses, I'd say her main skill weakness was her chest pass. I picked this out as the main weakness because it didn't always make it to its intended target, and this was probably due to the lack of power behind the pass itself, and she wasn't always in the right position before taking the pass, so she didn't always have the ball with a W shape behind it at chest height, and this often led to it being intercepted or tipped by the opposing team. The overall efficiency of her chest passes wasn't very good, because it was often intercepted or tipped by the other team, and her actual team had to work a lot harder to get the ball back if it'd been intercepted. So the actual coaching points of the chest pass is to stand with your feet shoulder width apart with a W shape behind the ball, and then in the execution phase extend at the elbow to push the ball forward with enough power and a flat trajectory in order for it to get towards its intended target. I'd say that another skill weakness of the goal defence was her actual defence of the shot itself. Although she was good at marking her opponent outside of the semicircle, sometimes when it came to marking inside the semicircle, this proved to be a bit difficult, and this could be due to the fact that she had quite weak trunk flexibility and core stability. So a lot of the time when she was leaning in, she would often fall in and cause obstruction, which meant that her opposing team had less pressure on their shots, because there was only one defensive player now, and this meant that sometimes they were able to get shots in quite freely, as there wasn't any defence on them. I'd say another skill weakness of hers was the fact that she didn't really use many methods to get free. So especially on the centre pass, although it's not imperative that she drives out, it's obviously helpful for her teammates if she's able to be a backup position. But what often happened was sometimes she would use the same dodges. So she'd always do like the fake dodge and come out, and after a few centre passes, her opponent anticipated what she was going to do and then followed her in doing this and was able to make some interceptions. Maybe due to her weak rectus femoris and gastrocnemius muscle group in her lower legs, she wasn't able to do the effective dodges to get free from her players. So she could have maybe used some reverse pivots or some other different type of fake dodges to get free from her players in another game. In relation to tactical weaknesses, I'd say that one of them would be her positioning. So sometimes if the goal shooter was taking a shot, and instead of actually marking the shot, if her player, the goalkeeper, was called up for obstruction, for instance, she would just stand underneath the post and just look up at the post and wait for the ball to come. So instead of applying a bit of extra pressure on the goal shooter, she would just stand there next to her other player, and this meant that there was obviously a clear lack of pressure on the opposing team, and they were able to make quite a few shots in this time. So I would say if she maybe positioned herself a little bit better in this time and maybe added a bit more pressure, even from in front or even from behind, this could have stopped her opposing team from taking more shots and getting them in. I'd say another tactical weakness of hers was defending from the back line. So although this isn't actually, you don't have to do this, but it obviously helps to add more pressure to the opposing team. So instead of her actually standing in front of the the goal defense, or whoever the goal attack, sorry, or the goal shoot, whoever's taking the back line, she would sort of just stand back a little bit and not always add as much pressure. It wasn't that she was wandering around, but she wasn't always on her toes and ready to sort of defend the pass. So this meant that there was obviously a little bit less pressure in this part of the court, and the opposing team was able to make a few quick passes in the time that she was not defending the actual pass. I'd say that one of her major fitness weaknesses, or a fitness weakness of hers that I picked out, was her muscular endurance. So I saw this as a weakness, as when it was getting to, say, the fourth quarter of the game, she was starting to look a bit fatigued and quite tired. So this could be due to her having sort of quite low cardiovascular fitness, or sort of low rectus femoris and gastrocnemius muscle groups. So sometimes, instead of her really sprinting and going for it on the centre passes, or when just in trying to defend in general, she would often maybe hang back a little bit, or maybe look a bit tired on court, which was a fitness weakness of hers that I picked out. Another fitness weakness that I saw was her flexibility. I'd say this was quite, this was probably another weakness of hers, as a lot of the time, because she was quite tall, her players would often feed in high balls to her, and because her flexibility was good, but it wasn't as strong as it could have been, she wasn't always able to stretch up and get the balls in, like collect the passes quite well, and this meant that the other team sometimes was able to intercept, or even if she just missed it completely, they then took the ball and took it down to their end of the court. Because of all of the strengths and weaknesses that I've picked out, I've created an action plan, and I'm basing this action plan on her chest pass, because I picked this out as her major skill weakness, because of the fact that it didn't always make it to its intended target, and it was often intercepted quite regularly. So this impacted her whole team's performance, because this meant that they had to work a lot harder to bring the ball back, because of the fact that her passes weren't always strong and powerful. I'd say that for the performer, it will be a 6-week program, so it's not too long that they'll get bored, but it's long enough for us to be able to track progress and see the relevant training adaptations to be made. So it's going to be made up of one macrocycle and 6 mesocycle, one mesocycle, sorry, and 6 microcycles, because it's obviously a 6-week program. In the first week there being 2 sessions a week. Then by week 3 we increase it to 3 sessions, and then by week 6 we have 4 sessions a week. So in the first week of the program, what we'll have to make sure we do is that we apply the Mrs. Vop principles of training. So in terms of moderation, the whole training program, because there'll only be a maximum of 4 sessions a week, this means that there's obviously going to be enough time for the performer to be able to rest and to recover, and for them to be able to see the actual training adaptations to be made. In terms of reversibility, hopefully this shouldn't occur during the training program, because hopefully they won't get injured, so we don't really have to think about this. In terms of specificity, the whole training program is specific and will just be working on improving her chest pass, so that each session will be tailored specifically at one part of the chest pass, and that will be hopefully resulting in an overall improvement in her chest pass as a whole. In terms of variance, the training sessions will be varied to sort of prevent boredom and to make sure that they're engaged and having fun, whilst also improving their skill of the chest pass. In terms of overload, the sessions will progressively get harder, and we'll be adding in a lot more things. As in, I think, week 3, they'll be adding in some defence to their training program, which will obviously act as a sort of overload, a progressively overloaded principle. And sort of obviously periodization is applied to this, as we're going to have 6 microcycles during the actual training program. I'd say that in order for her to know what she needs to work from, she needs to know the actual coaching points of the chest pass. So the actual coaching points are that you stand with your feet shoulder width apart, with your hands in W shape behind the ball, so that in the execution phase you can extend at the elbow and make sure that the dominant foot is behind for support, and as you step forward you transfer the weight and then the pass does make it towards its intended target. So I'd say in order for me to sort of prevent my performer from leading a sedentary lifestyle, I'm going to try and make the training sessions as fun as possible, so that they can see that exercise is important as well as being fun, so that they can continue to participate in lifelong involvement in physical activity. So at the beginning of each session, the coach will then outline what's going to be going on in the actual session, and at the end there'll be sort of some external feedback from the coach, so that they'll be able to know what they have to work on in time for their next lesson. And we'll also be using different types of guidance in each session. So sometimes we use visual guidance, so sort of videos and those kind of aids, for them to be able to see perfect models of chest passes, as well as using sort of demonstrations from other people that we'll bring in to show them the correct technique and the correct way to carry out this chest pass. So I'd say in week 1, the pre-test will be what will happen in week 1. So we'll put her into a game situation, and we'll count how many successful chest passes have been taken. So we'll know what to work from and what we're going to have to develop for the rest of the training program. I'd say that from this, in the second week now, we'll move into a practice where we put an X on the wall, and then she has to sort of chest pass towards that wall in order to get the sort of kinesthesis behind the pass, and that she's able to know exactly the right power to put behind it, so that she'll be able to implement this into a game situation. Now this is into the second week, what we're going to do is have one worker and two people, two feeders. So what the worker will have to do is she'll receive a chest pass from one of the feeders, then she has to give the chest pass and run round and then receive it again from the other one. So this will be sort of replicating a game-like situation, as you'll have to be driving to receive the pass and then running round to receive another one. So this is then sort of a bit more overload and progression in terms of instead of just being static now, she will be moving and driving onto the pass. In the week after this, what we're going to do is then still have two feeders, but what she'll have to do, she'll have to actually sprint to collect it, and then pass it to the feeder in front of her and then sprint back. So this is also, as well as working on her chest passes, will help her to be able to know exactly the right positions to be in. So even if she has to sprint to collect a ball or a short pass, she then knows how to regain her balance and get into the right position in order to do the correct chest pass after doing this. After this, sort of midway through the training program, what we'll do is have like a midway sort of point of a test to see that the intensity of the training sessions is either that it's enough, or that so that we can see the training adaptations, or if we have to increase it slightly in order for her to reach her end goal. So when we get to the last week of the training program, what we'll do is we'll put her back into a game situation, and then we'll be able to count how many successful chest passes she actually did, and that's what we'll base it from the pre-test to the post-test, and that's how we'll be able to see whether hopefully we'll be able to see that some improvement has been made in terms of her chest pass from her training program.